So, hi, welcome back. Today's topic is, I think, gonna be one of the most interesting ones that I have really commented on, which is the obsession of Gen Z to leave the country that respectively they live in. And maybe before we dive into this video, I do have a personal case study. Because I switch countries quite often. So I switched 3 times. I wasn't born in Germany. I didn't live my whole life in Germany. But currently I am living in Germany, so that you know, I do have a personal connection to this. Yeah, I do also think that that's just a side note again, that I do want to study in a different country. We will see whether it should work out or not. But for now, let's get back to the topic. I have again my notes, and I have the same background. I like it more, so we'll just stick with that. So, another case, this is not personal, this is just I tried looking at periods of time where we had this instability that we have now, and I found the Baroque era, specifically the 30-Year War. Now, the 30-Year War lasted 30 years, that's why the name is, 30-Year War, and it started because primarily of a conflict between the Catholics in specific Germany and the Protestants. And obviously, there was more to this topic, but if you look up the 30-Year War, you will see that this is primarily the reason why the war. Now, it ended with the Westphalia Peace Treaty in 1648, I believe. And as for the casualties, there are different, so I will just stick to an estimation from what I found. So, specifically, the most cited source I found was the analysis by Franz in 1994, in which he's essentially explaining that in rural areas there was a casualty rate of almost 40%. In urban cities it was 33%. In general, people really, like everybody. There are also estimates that range between 10 to 60 million dead people. Again, because I have so many, I'm not gonna stick to them, but it was enough. So from this era, people have developed certain art forms that are primarily known to be Baroque, because of the topic they talk about, namely that death is, first one, like you will die. People are seeing death on a daily basis, and they're seeing also plagues, they're seeing sickness, they see disease, they see what people can do to one another based on. So specifically, artists during that time developed 2 mottos. One is called Memento Mori, which loosely translates into "Do not forget that you are mortal." And the second one is Carpe Diem, which, used them. So a lot of people, they struggled with their mortality because they have seen how that might work out for them. Because if you see that people, and specifically people suffering with your very own eyes, you will see life a bit different. Because you see that life is very fragile and can end at at every moment. These people have been living with an acute fear of death for 3 days. And you can see the impact in the art. So since I'm new to editing to videos, I don't know whether I'll remember to edit every artwork in here, so I found some artworks that you probably also know, and we'll just start with the general ones, the most popular ones, which is the Vanitas Still. So the Vanitas Still Life are primarily pictures in which you do not see an individual, you don't see people, you just see flowers that are rotting, for instance. You see candles, you see hourglasses, things that tell you that the time of these things that you see in the picture are already, like, there is no timelessness to these pictures, because everything is dead and they're all like half rot, so they will meet their end in these pictures. But then again, there is no human. What else did I find? So I found Caravaggi, who is an Italian artist. So if there are Italians in here, sorry for the pronunciation. And he was distinctively known for his very extreme lighting in his pictures, and he also depicted incredible religious violence, like you can see that in his pictures. I'll try to show here. And he, is a product of this 30-year. Then I think a name that some people might know is Rembrandt. He shows psychological portraits of himself. I believe he painted a portrait in which he's showing himself. I'm not quite sure how many times he did that in order for us to see his aging process. Then you have the sculpture. I did get taught about Bernini in my art, so I know what he built. I'm also aware that he had, I think, sculptures about Greek mythology at one point, but he's also known for, I think, a sculpture titled The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. Yeah, I wrote it down. So also, again, trying to show it. And as for the literature, you have Andreas, I don't even know how to pronounce him. He's Gryphius, not quite. He also showed us the memento mori and carpe diem in his poets, in his poems. So essentially, you kind of see the huge impact of war on artworks. Even architecture was inspired by that. So if you know Versailles started during the Baroque. So it is very huge, the details are incredible. You see that a lot of money was spent into building this rather than feeding it. And that is also kind of like a Baroque thing, to show the thing that you can build with your money, since you'll die anyway. Like, show the world the beauty of things that you can, to such an extent that it seems disgusting in terms of thinking about there was a raging war just a few years. So that was the Baroque. And for Gen Z, the Momentum Mori and Carpe Diem specifically has a new motion to it. People are picking up these. And for Gen Z, imagine the difference between us and the Baroque era is that a lot of these issues that we have, climate change, political instability, the financial crisis, another financial crisis that might happen because of AI bubble burst, they are not accurate. Like, they are not right now. They are happening either currently now, and they're compound. So these are very much compounding problems, but there is no full-on war. Obviously there is one, but not currently where I live. And specifically for most of the Western world, we currently do not have very acute problems that really endanger all, as we see it from different parts of the world. We need to differentiate between these two things. Obviously, if you live in these areas, that's a very different thing. Then you are facing acute problems. But since I'm assuming that the majority of people that are watching this video live in the West, we do not have current acute problems. So Baroque, in this explanation that I just gave you beforehand, is not accurate. Still, it works because people are reminded that their life is indeed, and that might be because we know that the systems we live in, when they break down, they will survive. And we don't know how long the war will last, because if it happens violently, you will have it. If you have studied history just good enough, you'll probably see why people are very much concerned about their security. And this is why primarily this Baroque era thing has taken up movement again. It is because people expect to be violence in the near future. And then it will be an acute problem. And then we don't know how long the war will. And one of the different things that are very much different to the Baroque era is the resentment of young. So why do people want to leave the country? Obviously, I have given you explanation in terms of people want to experience before they die because their life is very much Baroque inspired, and people want to also show off what life they have. Also in terms of kind of like a Baroque-ish aesthetic, because people do show off. And if your Versailles is a huge travelogue of Instagram photos, then obviously you're going to show that off, because then you're signalizing that, hey, I experienced the world before I die. Not quite sure whether you right, and then it's again a status. That is not necessarily the case. People, specifically young people, they know that the taxes will get increased. It's currently happening now. They know that they have no pay. They know that they cannot afford, and they know that the mantra of work hard, play hard, live the life that you want, doesn't apply in the sense of staying in a very traditional path. So I do believe that working hard equals certain benefits, but you need to be incredibly creative in how you approach. So the path of going to school, uni, and then work doesn't work. You need to be doing things, ahead of your time, and maybe even so that you can gain some benefits. But that's a discussion for another. So people are truthful. They have a lot of reasons to be permanently resentment against older generation. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is, bad in any way. I'm not saying that. I'm referring to the demographic. So I am pretty sure that specifically for Germany, 42% of voters are over the age of 60. See the problem? They're almost a majority in it. And the young people, they are everywhere in the minority. Like, even if they vote all together for one specific party, it doesn't matter, because they will be outvoted by older generations. And so this is why the resentment is there, and this is why they want to. Coming back again to the showing off version of this whole experiencing thing, there's a certain FOMO to it, namely that you want to experience as well, because people are doing it. and that hasn't. So René Girard was a French who taught at Stanford University, I think, until 2015 when he died, and he called it mimetic desire. As a side note, mimetic desire as a framework was understood by Peter Thiel, and that's the reason why he became the first investor at Facebook, because he understood that people were going to. Side note. So mimetic desire is essentially the framework which explains why social media is incredibly successful. Because we people like to see what other people are doing, and then we want to do this. And when we see a lot of people travel, a lot of people doing new things, a lot of people, engaging with new cultures, we want to do the same, because we expect that, they had a very good reason to do it. Why should I not do it? Because I want to experience the good reason for traveling. And so this is obvious, I think, the second argument that I had. So to recap, until now we had the Baroque argument with memento mori and carpe diem. We had the FOMO argument, and now I have another argument which I do write down, but I just get popped in my head, which is the following. It does derive from the FOMO argument so if you have been active on social media, you're seeing a very interesting trend currently. Suddenly, Western people, I'm sorry to generalize, but it's just easier for me, Western people are suddenly interested in Chinese culture. People are picking up Mandarin in records. People want to study at top Chinese universities and are opting out of American. People, again Westerners, are now learning Arabic, which I never understood, right? Because I'm Arabic. I do not remember a time in Germany where it was an interesting thing to be different. Like, I don't remember that. Now suddenly it's a trend to speak Arabic, to know some words. Goes for both ways, Mandarin and Arabic. And also Southeast Asia is experiencing the same thing with Western. And I'm thinking to myself, that is a weird, it never happened before. I remember I had friends from East Asia. They were harassed because they were East Asian. Like, I know the comments that I got. So I do not understand that kind of go on and be interested in other cultures when there was a trend beforehand to hate them. It's a weird thing, I don't understand it. But there is this trend, like, that's what I want to say. There's this trend of specifically Western people getting interested into Asia, like West and East. And if you think about it, that is also a sign that they want to live. Obviously, Dubai is a place that a lot of people want to go to. Then you have Shanghai, then you have Tokyo, then you have Seoul. So these tourist destinations are very much clear in the Western world, and also they are, they're rooted. A lot of people want to do these things because they've seen other people do it. Tokyo is the prime example. A lot of people went to Tokyo. More people want. So this is why Japan, I think, has raised the cost of coming to Japan like a few percentages or so. This third argument that I'm presenting is essentially a new found interest in other cultures that were before primarily seen as negatives. That is the thing that I want. And now, let's look at it, because I didn't mention data, I think, at all. And I found some very interesting data to talk about, because it comes back and cleans the whole argumentation of why GenZ. In 2020, in February, there was a poll by Harris. Now, these data that I've found, they are applicable to so we cannot generalize. So 63% of Gen Z have considered going. Now, for the US, I understand that things are much worse for them, from what I've seen. Like, in terms of living costs, obviously do not really have social security. Colleges, they're expensive. So I understand that for them, this is a more dire situation than for other people. For Gallup, that was, I think, also done. 21% of Americans wanted to leave America, which is double the number, where in 2010 it was only 10%. They have found after almost 14 a double. And so the trend to leave the country is accelerating. And then you have data actually for Germany, which I found, which is 1 in 5 wants to leave the country, which was done this year, with 41% of the asked population, which was around 2,000 people that they asked. 41% could imagine leaving and moving abroad permanently. The 1 in 5 is essentially people who do have a plan. They already have a plan to leave the country. Also, an interesting statistic for immigrants in Germany, namely 37% of second or third generation migrants wants to leave Germany. And this is a number which is huge, because last 300,000 Germans, almost 300,000 Germans, left Germany as either expats or permanent. I did not read that there was a differentiation between them. in the Western, it doesn't matter where you're looking, people want to leave, and it's the younger people. Specifically with the last number that I have told you, these are people who are young, they are educated, they have a bachelor's degree in most cases, and they are very much needed in their respective home countries. But they still decide. And I think the arguments of I want to explore before I die, because I see the system is I want to experience the world because other people are doing it and I don't want to be left out / FOMO. And the last argument, suddenly there is an interest in different cultures and countries. Do explain why people want to. Obviously, the people resent, specifically from young people, very grounded, and like there is nothing you can do to argue with them about it, because what I have not mentioned is that the older generations, the more likely they are to send the young people into wars. For years specifically, most of the wealth that was created was through having college and having migrants that you just don't pay fair. So this is, and you can kind of see why they have no money. Obviously, it also depends on that people are getting old. But this is one of the things that do happen. So drafts are being now considered for younger people, and if you don't want to go to the military, you're going to do a civil service for free, obviously. Yeah, this is why people want to leave the country. Specifically for the West, there is a lot of comprehensive, and I do think they have a very, very valid reason. Now, specifically for the video ending, this is my side note now. Specifically for the migrants, a lot of them don't have in the countries that they live in. I do not feel that specifically because I have also changed within Germany, a lot of cities. I am not someone that believes in living in one country, neither in one city, and because of social media, you see a lot of people that are living very differently from you, and you also see ideal lives that you want to live. And the majority of these ideal lives is seeing and going around the world and deciding where you want to live after so many countries, and that's what most people want to do. That's what this was if you liked it, feel free to subscribe, and if you have the time, feel free to go through my Substack. I just started it because I do like the Medium UI somehow, like the UI of Substack a bit, and it's just better because so many things you can do in Substack for the the personalization of your emails and what you write, that stuff. So feel free to check it out, and that's it. I hope I'm gonna edit the video really good so that it's better than the last one I did. So yeah.